Dr. Weisbach, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I've been following your emails for quite a long time, at least 2 years, I think. Um, I'm not quite sure where I first encountered your website, but I know that injury prevention is obviously something that all musicians take seriously. Maybe not as seriously as they should, but I thought it was a great idea to sign up for your email list. And I think you're one of the few people who've actually sent emails very, very consistently. So very, I appreciate you for that. Um,
Thank you.
I was looking at your bio, and I think you're the first person who hasn't even attended college for music that we've interviewed.
Yep.
So let's just start off there. I'm sure you get this asked a lot. But what got you into tailoring your physical therapy for musicians?
Yeah, very common question. I've played music for pretty much as long as I can remember. I started playing guitar when I was 6 or 7. Apparently, as my mom says, I refused to play the piano, so guitar was the next best thing. So I played that for a while. I played saxophone all through middle school, high school. I played in a jazz band, and I seriously considered going to music school for it, but eventually decided that that wasn't the path that I wanted to go down. And so kind of lost connection with music and then regained it in college and played in a little pop punk band and gigged around the Boulder and Denver, Colorado area and had a bunch of fun with music again. And then lost connection with it and went to physical therapy school and was kind of doing my general physical therapy thing and was working in the Boston area at the time and just ended up getting a fair amount of musicians from Berkeley coming through with various problems, and I found them really fun to work with because I love music and I love talking to musicians and that whole side of things. And I was kind of aiming in a different direction during my career then, so that was just something an interesting group to work with. I found that there was a lot that I could do to help them out, and I always love working with people who are trying to do really interesting things with their life, such as become a professional musician. And then a couple of years later, I was kind of struggling to find meaning in my career again. Healthcare can get burnout in healthcare is pretty common, and so I was getting a little bit burnt out and kind of searching for who do I really care about and who do I want to help. And kind of musicians popped into my head again, and at that point, it kind of began an obsession. I'm a little bit of a research nerd, so I started reading the medical literature of musicians' injuries and all of that, and found there's a lot of amazing information out there on how frequently injuries occur, what kinds of injuries they are, and what you can do to help them, and found that my skill set kind of matched up with that. And then I took a tour of the internet to see what type of information was out there for musicians to find for themselves, and found that I really didn't think it was that great. So I decided to start making things for musicians. I live in Boulder, Colorado, and we don't have a huge, if I were living in New York City, I would have a much easier time just being a full-time physical therapist for musicians, but Boulder, Colorado might not support that, but there's a whole online community out there. So that's where I've decided to put a lot of my efforts into. So I like to say I've adopted musicians. I felt like y'all use a little bit of help in the injury realm. And so I've started putting information out there and started getting some really good feedback and finding that a lot of folks are finding it helpful.
Mm-hmm. And on the, I know on your website, you also, something that stood out is you mentioned like your music school probably doesn't teach you like true injury prevention. I've gone to a couple of summer festivals, and a lot of times they actually promise sort of like the Alexander technique classes,
Yep.
and stuff like that. But we'll get maybe one class the entire two
Yep.
or 6 weeks that we're there. My school is supposed to offer body mapping,
Mhm.
but I don't know what body mapping is, which shows how we have
Oh,
actually.
no.
Earlier this week was my finals week, so we went
Mhm.
the entire school year without actually getting anything on injury prevention. What do you think the
Yep.
reason is? Because I know, of course, there's a huge money influence for these schools, but
Yep.
they do at least want our success, and they won't be able to have successful students if they're getting injured. What do you think the reason is that music schools and conservatories don't provide enough resources?
I think it's really hard for them. I think there's a big money crunch. Like I have a relationship with the music school um, close by to me, and it's, it's difficult to, they would, in some aspects they would like me to come in. In some aspects it's kind of like it's difficult logistically to have that work out. It's hard to fit it in. Like you all have so much that you have to learn, and like music students are some of the busiest students already. So adding another thing on the plate can be really difficult and overwhelming when that can be challenging. It's hard to find good quality information sometimes or trust the information. And it's a huge cultural shift for music as well. Like it's difficult to stop and be like, wow, our injury rates are really high. And there's things that we might want to be doing about that. But there's a lot of cultural inertia to shift directions. And it's challenging on that end too. I love Alexander technique and body mapping, and I think those are wonderful modalities. And I also think there's a lot of other things out there that would complement that too. I think, those have done probably the best out of anything at getting into music programs and teaching musicians a little bit more about how their bodies work. But it's a difficult problem. So I've almost taken the stance of I'm an outsider. I'm an outsider who cares, and I can kind of see what's going on. I can step back, and I'm not in the middle of all of that, and I can appreciate that it's difficult and challenging. And I want to kind of connect with individuals, and without taking up a ton of your time or having you have to devote all of your time and attention to exercising, but just figuring out what are the little things that people can do that are going to make a big shift in the likelihood that they're going to get injured or how they feel while they're playing. Yeah, I wish I had the answer for what we can do, bigger picture wise.
Well, I know you'll have bias towards this, but I think we can all agree that exercise should at least be placed into the routine to a certain extent, and stretching
Yep.
out. Where would you find like the diminishing returns happens? Like, of course, if you probably don't need to warm up for 2 hours, what would you
Yep.
say like the perfect amount of time where you're able to warm up and really optimize your practicing,
Yep.
but without, spending too much time on just exercising when you already have limited
Yep.
time?
Yep. So I think the sweet spot is about 5 minutes of moving your body, not music specific, but about 5 minutes of general moving your body before you play. That can be first thing in the morning or as a physical warm up prior to playing. I think somewhere in the 10-minute range each evening in order to do more recovery type work so that your body can absorb all of the work that you put it through. I think it's not always apparent to people just how physical playing music can be, but it's wildly physical on your body and stressful. And so spending some time to try and let your body recover from that more quickly, so that's about 15 minutes a day there. And then I think somewhere between 1 and 3 times a week, doing a little bit of a bigger workout where you focus on the strength of muscles that are really your postural support muscles. Like it's not just any exercising that I think is important for musicians, although I'll take anything that people are willing to do. But I think if you choose muscle groups well based on the areas that tend to be problematic and lead to injuries, you can make a whole lot of change in 30 minutes 1 to 3 times a week. But diminishing returns can come from some general cardio. That's great for your health and wellness. It's probably not going to make you feel wildly better playing. Biceps curls and tricep curls are great things that people do in the gym, but it's not biceps and triceps that are limiting or contributing to painful problems for musicians. It's a set of different muscles.
So there's a lot there to address.
Yes.
Let's start off with the muscle groups that you should target in the gym.
Yep.
Optimize your playing. I know, like, for a lot of people, by a lot of people I mean myself, I find it hard to do the bicep curls and stuff, and it kind of makes my body sore. I'm a cellist.
Yep.
We have to have our arms up.
Yeah.
It's almost hard to just I don't know. Perhaps I need a better warm up routine just before working out. But
Yep.
what do you say the exercises I should do to optimize brain performance let's say as a cellist right now, or as a string player in general?
Yeah, it's really the muscle groups that are important are probably not the muscle groups that people talk about in terms of a general, gym routine, but it's pretty consistent across instruments. So there's some little deep neck stabilizer muscles that help you keep an appropriate posture and protect your neck. Call them like the deep neck stabilizer muscle group. That's a biggie. There's around your shoulder, there's these postural muscles called your rotator cuff muscles, and exercise for those. That's a crucial area for musicians. The same for your smaller shoulder blade muscles. That's a really big area as well, particularly for musicians where that area of your shoulder creates stability for everything else that you're going to do down your hand. So if you don't have good stability there, everything else down the line has to work harder. And forearm injuries tend to be some of the bigger groups of injuries. Aside from that, like your abdominal muscles and some of your deep hip stabilizer muscles, those play the biggest role. And your little lower back stabilizer muscles, all of those play the biggest role in terms of lower back pain and problems with back pain standing for a long time, or some of that middle back pain that people get for practicing for too long. So it's not you're like, I'm going to do back and biceps day and then chest and triceps day or things like that. That's in kind of a more conventional gym routine. Again, those are good to keep you generally healthy and strong, but I haven't seen a whole lot that shows that those translate to reduced injury risk and feeling better on your instrument.
All right. So something I didn't expect, and it was actually the first one you brought up, is the neck tension.
Yeah.
Because I never really think of like exercises for the neck.
Nope.
Yeah. So, and it actually makes a lot of sense because I know a lot of tension for me comes from the neck. I know people have their stance really low and they're kind of like so. Can you give a couple of exercises? I know you gave one, but other exercises for the neck. Would you say the common, like, doing this and up and downs are effective, or is there something that's a little bit more effective than that for the neck?
So I start differentiating out my exercises in terms of what's the goal of the exercise. There's 3 goals that we really care about. Goal number 1 would be to loosen things up. So that would be like your neck rolls right there. That's going to try and loosen things up, reduce some tension, help everything move a little bit more smoothly. The second goal tends to be, can you improve the coordination of how well that muscle is working in the context of what you're doing? So it's really less about how far you stretch it. It's less about how tired you get it. It's more about how precisely can you do a movement. And then the third thing is building strength or endurance around it. And a lot of what I think is so in the warm-up and in the recovery times, we want to do more flexibility type work. And then in those days where you're doing a longer workout, we'd like to work on your coordination and your strength. And so for the deep neck muscles, the one that I start people with is if you go with your shoulders and the back of your head on a wall, and then you're just going to slide the back of your head up and down the wall like that. And so that's going to activate these little deep muscles. It's going to try and, more importantly for the neck, is that you're finding ways to make your little deep stabilizer muscles work without your bigger kind of mover muscles work. A very common profile is people are trying to create stability with the muscles that are meant to move your head around, which is kind of like trying to make an endurance runner, or I'm sorry, trying to make a sprinter run a marathon. Like they're just not built for it. And so that can generate a lot of tension through the neck. So I think more important than stretching, if you stretch it out, it'll just keep getting tight again. And if you can improve your strength and stability, then you can actually do more before that tension comes on. So I call it the wall chin tuck exercise, trying to slide up the wall and then down the wall. And a very common profile that you'll see, it's hard for me to do here, but these muscles, I don't know if this is going to be on video, but there's the kind of the bigger muscles on the side of your neck through there. Those muscles we want very quiet, whereas the other muscles you wouldn't really feel it, but the other muscles are making the movement happen. And so it's different. It's definitely a different approach to exercise. And then I think of that I think of increasing your strength very similar to increasing your repertoire playing music. You start with something easy until you can do it, and then you gradually make it harder. The good news with your muscles is you don't need to be you don't have to have advanced strength to be comfortable playing. But so I'll usually start people with a very simple version that targets that muscle group, and then move them to a little more challenging version, and then a little more challenging version. Because what you find if you skip ahead too fast, it's more likely to cause problems than it is to help you.
On that note of recovery, let's say there's only you only have 10 minutes, not enough time to pull up Cody's email list.
Yeah.
What's one easy to remember and effective exercise you can do every single night, just right before you go to bed when you're low with energy, but want to recover your body a little bit?
So the two, I'm going to cheat and I'm going to do two, because I think there's two key areas to recover as quickly as possible from. One is your thoracic spine, which people often don't think about stretching. And one is your wrist and forearm muscles. These, I don't know if you signed up a long time ago, the first two, like when somebody goes to my website and signs up for it, the first two exercises are these two exercises. So the one of them is the palm press. And if you're going to put your hands together with your elbows in close to your body, you're going to bring your elbows out to the sides so the heels of your hands are still touching. And then if you think of the first knuckle where people tend to get calluses, kind of right where your fingers meet the palm of your hand, you're going to try and keep those together as you push the heel of your hand apart. So you get this big bend backwards. And what that's going to do is it's going to take the tendon that goes through the ends of your fingers that you use like crazy as a musician, that ends up in the muscle in your forearm. And that's going to start loosening that up and stretching it out. Very commonly, I'll see musicians who can only go to there. They can't make that fold happen in their fingers because they're very tight through there. Does that make sense? So if you lift your hands up just a little bit more, and then try and push your heels. Can you see how you again, if this is not on video, it's going to be hard for people to visualize it. But if you look at my fingers, how my fingers will break there. I get this. And as you try and push apart, they stay relatively straight.
Yeah.
Very common for musicians. Important area. I've had musicians come into my clinic and they're like, that's an impossible movement. I don't do that. Musicians don't do that. They work on it for a while and they open it up. Very commonly tightness in that. I'll very commonly see people who've had, like I had not too long ago, both a cellist and a violinist who had bowing problems through their bowing arm, pain and nerve pain through their bowing arm. And when I had them do that movement, the fingers of their bowing arm would go pretty much nowhere, and their other fingers would bend back a little way. So that there can be a correlation between forearm finger problems and the side of more stiffness.
Interesting. And the second one?
The second one is so it's a middle back exercise. I call it the thoracic rotation and sweep. You just lie down on your side, tuck a pillow under your head, bend your knees up, and then first you're going to grab your rib and just breathe out and rotate back and kind of let things open up. You do a couple of those, and then you reach your arm forwards and you just do a big half circle over your head, and then sweep your arm back and forth like that. If you do 3 to 5 of each of those on each side, that's going to open up a whole lot through your middle back and through your chest wall and through your rib cage, which when you're playing music for a long time, a lot of that gets locked down and gets really stiff and tight. And that can contribute to problems up at your neck and down in your shoulders. But I think those are the two biggest areas that if I were to give something to everybody to do, after a long day of playing, it would be loosen the fingers back up, keep track of those, because the fingers are your livelihood for the majority of musicians. Mm-hmm. And then keeping your middle back flexible, because that plays a role in a bunch of different areas.
Did I assume that it's supposed to be like kind of on the edge of the bed so that your arm can go?
I would just do it on the floor.
On the floor.
Yeah.
So your arm kind of just goes back to hit the floor. Is that?
Yep. Here, it's not going to help if people can't see it, but I can just do it right here on my floor. So I lie down on my side, get a pillow under my head, tuck my knees up a good way,
Mhm.
grab my hand here.
Yeah.
And the first part would just be breathe out and roll. Do 3 to 5 of those. And then with the sweep, you reach it forward and you make a big long arch over here. Whoa, that's tight on mediate. And then back over the top. Makes me want to hold my breath. So I'm going to try and do better at breathing and relaxing through that. And that's a really nice way to just undo a lot of it feels great. That's my exercise for when if I do go to the gym and I don't want to work out, I just lay down on the ground and do that. It feels great.
Yeah. Um, you touched on it a little bit, but what are the most common injuries that you see in musicians?
I see. So I'm not a hand therapist. So a lot of musicians will get just finger tendonitis, tendon injuries. I don't see as many of those. I'll usually refer those out specifically to a hand therapist. I see a lot of forearm tendonitis. I see a lot of nerve pain going down the arm. Some of it gets called thoracic outlet syndrome, where just depends on where we think that's coming from. I see a lot of shoulder pain. I see a lot of neck pain and a lot of low back pain.
Do you
And
see
that middle back pain too.
sorry. Do you see a particular instrument that has a significantly higher amount of injuries?
So statistically, and this tracks for my clinic as well, high strings and flutes have the highest injury rate. Cellos are not that far behind, and then it kind of drops off from there. It's like these asymmetric instruments, particularly when you're holding it out in front. But yeah, they have the highest injury rate.
What do you think the reason is for that?
I think it's positioning. If you have to hold your arms out in front of your body, hold something of weight, that's asymmetrical, awkward off to one side. That's not particularly instruments were not generally made to be very ergonomic. We are meant to conform around the instrument, and those tend to be just in a more difficult position. Mm-hmm. But there's other things that contribute are big changes in the amount of time that you're playing. I think summer festivals are a very common time where the amount that people play increases by like a lot. And so if I had a runner in my clinic and I went from running, 20 miles a week to 60 miles a week, how come I'm injured? Everybody be like, well, you went from 20 to 60. And that, doubling to tripling weekly playing amounts is very common. So playing amount plays a factor. Changing instruments, particularly to bigger instruments, plays a pretty big role as well.
Do you think a good strategy for combating that is like kind of increasing the amount you're playing a day leading up to the festival?
Absolutely.
And then of course the exercises that you mentioned.
Yeah, if you can do a little bit of strengthening, like, oh, I've got this, I have a festival coming up. This is not only going to be, challenging musically, but it's probably going to be physically challenging as well. And it's nice to go there and like enjoy that experience and not have your body feel awful during it. Spend a little bit of, if you spend some 12 weeks of doing a little bit more exercise and also gradually and purposely increasing your playing over those 12 weeks, if you increase your playing by 10% a week, roughly 10 to 15% a week tends to be safe. Your body will get stronger and your endurance will get better, and you'll probably have a better time there.
What about when musicians take a break? So going from zero, how would you recommend getting back on their instrument? Let's say you're a musician who usually practices 4 hours a day and you're back from let's say 1 to 3 week vacation. How would you say they should start getting back into it as efficiently as possible?
Is that about 4 hours a day?
Yeah.
The practicing?
Practice.
Yeah, I think for a 3 week break, you're not going to lose a lot. You'll lose a little bit of endurance, but not very much. So if you start back at 1 to 2 and just go by feel, your body is going to give you some cues, in terms of what it wants to and what it doesn't want to do. So if you start feeling that like stiffness and tension or fatigue in the forearms or that heaviness in the arms, then that's a good indicator that it needs a little bit of a break. But I would bet that you can start with 1 to 2 and then pretty quickly start ramping up from there. Over the course of 1 to 2 weeks, you can probably get it back up to your typical playing volume.
Okay, what about longer periods of time?
Longer periods of time, it's going to depend how long. I've had some people, and this is one of the difficulties with one of them. This is maybe a little bit of a different topic, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. Is that a common injury treatment strategy is oftentimes to stop playing for a time, and then musicians get frustrated that they stop playing, and then they go back to playing, and nothing's really changed. They feel fine once they've stopped playing, but when you start playing again, it's a problem. And so that's really more a matter of paying a little bit of attention to the cues that your body is giving you and either pushing a little bit or backing off depending. So one thing that I give people, I use returning to, a lot of the people that I'll see in my clinic, they'll have taken off somewhere between, like 1 month and a year from playing because of their injury. And so as we get their injury under control, the second half of that is building back up the amount of playing tolerance that you have. I almost think of it as just like your tolerance and endurance to playing. And what I have people look for is once you start playing, how do you feel the next day? Do you feel pretty much your average the next day, or do you still feel not right, stiff, kind of beat up, things like that? If you can recover by the next day, you're free to do a little bit more. If you haven't recovered by the next day, your body needs a little bit more time to recover. So it's got to be kind of like an easy playing day.
Mhm.
And then when you go back to it the next day, you can kind of push it again, assuming you've recovered, but not pushing it further. And if it takes you more than 2 days, then you need to back off and start with what your body can actually do. There can be a discrepancy between what you can force your body to do and what it can do safely. And what I've noticed is that if we actually start at the start and start at what your body can do safely and then gradually increase it, it's pretty impressive how fast you can make progress. But if you consistently try to push through it, you're not going to win. Your body's going to push back harder.
What advice would you give to someone who is injured to the point where they can't really do that? They can't play at all. They have to
Mm-hmm.
wait at least a couple weeks, maybe even over a month. I'm sure we've encountered
Mm-hmm.
lots of that situations,
Mm-hmm.
particularly the psychological aspect,
Yep.
especially professional musicians, where
Yep.
that every day that you don't practice, you feel like you're
Mm-hmm.
going to get worse, and
Mm-hmm.
you like the
Yep.
competition's going to get better. What would you
Yep.
say to?
So I would tell them to look at what pro sports does. So I think pro sports about 30 years ago didn't want to talk about injuries, told people if they were hurt, they were just, they were kind of being a baby and they just need to toughen up and that it's just part of it and all of that. What pro sports has learned, because there's so much money in it now, is that their athletes are resources. And if things start to go wrong, they shut them down, get them the treatment they need, support them, and get them back to where they need to be, and then return them to playing as soon as possible. And that's how it works there. Music hasn't quite gotten to that place yet. So I think looking at that and trying to create your own model of when I see people in my clinic, if I see somebody with a problem that's not like a huge problem that's been brewing for months, it's much easier to fix small problems than it is to fix big problems. And so if you get if you can find ways to reduce the amount that you're playing, if you can find good help, this is the hard part in healthcare is frequently a lot of musicians don't necessarily have health insurance or things like that. But if you can find somebody who can help you out, I think, I'm 100% biased, but I think physical therapists are one of the more useful professions for this type of thing. Most states have direct access, so you don't necessarily need to see another doctor first. You can go see your physical therapist and get started on the treatment plan right away. And they will do a pretty thorough assessment and can put together a treatment plan. There's also, if somebody's in that situation, I would love to see all of you, but I can only see people in Colorado from my license. But if you are curious about, there's resources that you can give your physical therapist as well to help get them up to date on what musicians need. So there's I have an article that I've given to musicians to give to their physical therapist or their medical practitioner that breaks down all of the things to look at and kind of the specific challenges that will bring them up to speed on musicians' needs. There's a very common continuing education platform that a lot of physical therapists use that has two pretty good how to assess and treat musicians out there. So finding someone who is willing, even if they don't have a ton of experience working with musicians, if you find somebody who feels like you have a good rapport with, is a skilled physical therapist and is willing to learn a little bit about what you need, they can be wildly valuable to you in terms of guiding you through that process. But I think it's really hard to do it on your own. And if anybody ever has questions, you are all welcome to email me, Cody@musiciansmaintenance.com, and ask questions, and I'll do my best to help out. But it's difficult because there's not a lot of resources out there, and I've talked to way too many musicians who say they try to go get help, and the help they get told is whatever, you're a musician, just stop playing, like it's and kind of dismissed, which is too bad. And then once somebody gets dismissed, then they don't want to get back into the system. They're like, what else can I do? But I do think that there's lots of people out there that can help you and guide you through that. And I wish that the system was built to help guide you through that. And I think that that's coming at some point. But yes, it's definitely understanding that you're injured. We need to change some things, and you need to get some help and find that help. And that's truthfully the fastest path to move forward.
Do you think that mental health has as big of an impact on musicians' physical health and injury prevention as people say it does?
Yes, 100%. Yeah,
how-
we can't separate out. We like to separate out mind and body, but mind and body are the same thing. It's all body. Our mind is part of our body. And so when I talk about, one of the questions that I answer to people a lot is like, how do injuries happen? For musicians, these are overuse injuries. So how do injuries happen? This can help us understand it more, and we can link in the mental health side of things as well. But the analogy I use is the water in the cup, I call it. So it's, if you imagine your body is a cup, and all of the things that you're doing is water going into the cup. As that cup fills to a higher and higher level, at some point you're going to get warning messages that the cup's getting too full, and that's pain. And once that cup overflows, you have a full-blown injury and things go wrong. So with that, our three options are to try and pour less in the cup, try and drain more out of the cup, and to try and get a bigger cup. So pouring less in is all the activity modifications that you might do. Stop playing is a pour less in strategy. Getting stronger through your muscles, or gradually increasing your physical tolerance to playing by gradually increasing how long you're playing week over week. Those are ways that you can build a bigger cup. The morning and evening recovery exercises, that's draining that cup out. So we've got a couple of ways that we can go after it. But your body, water going into the cup is just stressors on your body. Playing is a physical stressor on your body. It might be a physical stressor on a particular tendon that's having a hard time doing it, but your body doesn't differentiate between physical stressors and emotional stressors. And so you will still, that emotional stressors are still water going into your cup. So if mental health is challenging, your cup is already pre-filled 2/3 to 3/4, there's not a whole lot of capacity left for the physical stressors that you're going to have to handle with your body. So that can push you over the edge in exactly the same way, because pain, it's just an electrical signal that's being interpreted by your brain and something that you're feeling. And stress is just an electrical signal. And so the difference is, there's no difference as far as your body is concerned. So I think it plays a big role in it. Also, pain, if you think about it more, pain isn't a bad thing. We like to think pain is bad. Pain is a very good thing. Pain is there to protect you. It's one of our biggest defenders. We don't like it when the protection gets out of control. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, depression and anxiety are also there to protect you. They're trying to get you to ruminate on or really focus on specific problems. It gets bad when it gets out of control. When things become overprotective, it gets challenging. And so they're cousins like that. Other things that are protective is you're going to if there's a need to protect physically or mentally, emotionally, your body is going to try and protect you by increasing tension in your muscles. And that's going to add more water into your cup. Your body's going to release different hormones into your chemicals and hormones into your bloodstream, like cortisol and adrenaline. Cortisol will make your tissues more sensitive. So something that would typically not be painful can start to become painful. Your fight or flight system, that side of your nervous system, that's kind of like the stress side and then the rest and relax side. If your body is always in the stress side of that nervous system because of mental and emotional stressors, the flip side of that is rest, relax, and heal and recover. And so if you can't get your system into that heal and recover side of things, that's just more water going into your cup. So I think that plays a huge role. And I think it's such a great thing that you've taken on this project, because I think that there's 10 out of 10 injured musicians that I've seen are having some kind of mental health challenge with it. We don't always know chicken or the egg. How much is the mental health challenge contributing to the injury, and how much is the pain and injury contributing to the mental health challenge? Because pain and injury are meant to be stressful and cause distress. But I think I think that you can't separate them out. And while my side of the equation is physical, I've been trained in what would be called like a biopsychosocial approach, where pain is part biology, part the signals going in from your muscles or tendons, part social and part psychological. It all goes in and gets mixed together.
So what I'm kind of getting from that is adrenaline is something that can lead. That's a kind of a psychological thing that can lead to injuries. And of course, when musicians think of adrenaline, they think of performing. And
yes. Well, there's a balance, right? So there's, with any stress, it's what gets called the there's the inverse U stress performance curve, if you've heard of that. If you want to perform, like if you're going to go perform the biggest the biggest event of your career so far, you don't want to have your stress level so low, because you're not going to perform. Part of performing is that it is stressful, and that's fun. Like, we like stress. Amusement parks are all about stress and creating that excitement. If you are too far along that, so a little bit of stress gets you to the top of the curve, and that's where you want to be. If there's too much of that, then you start going down the other side of it, and it starts to become a detriment to your performance, which is where performance anxiety and things like that starts to come in. There's too much stress, so you need to back out of it. If you're not up for the performance, you need to push into it in different ways. So we need both. The other piece is that I think mental health is no different than let's call it cultivating mental resilience is no different than cultivating physical resilience. If I want to get stronger, I'm going to go exercise, and then I'm going to rest and recover. And I'm going to give it some time, and then I'm going to exercise, and I'm going to rest and recover. And I'm going to and so it's this, like, when you're exercising is where you're stressing, but you're not getting stronger then. When you're recovering is when you're getting stronger. Mentally and emotionally, if you push into stress, and then you can back out into recovery, and then push into stress, and then back out into recovery, you can become more resilient. The hard thing is when the stress is persistent and constant, and you don't feel like you have a way to back out into recovery. That's going to be really hard on your system in general. And so that'll be hard from a mental health standpoint, and that'll be hard from a physical standpoint as well.
Yeah, I think it's kind of paradoxical how like the way to improve your physical health is mental health, but then the way to improve your mental health is physical health.
A lot of times we'll go opposites, right? I've worked with a lot of psychologists, and they've said that one of the best ways to improve somebody's mental health is to get them exercising and moving. And one of the best ways to improve somebody's physical health, and I have to have these it's called physical therapy, but going into it, I didn't think there'd be quite so much therapy in the physical therapy side of things, but we have to talk about, we can't just ignore the whole mental health side of things. So, it's a common thing to talk, relaxation strategies and all of these types of things, as well as referring referring out to mental health practitioners and trying to just destigmatize that whole process as well, because that can be as big of a stigma as injury is in some circles. Seeking out help for when you're struggling mental health wise there can be a big stigma against that, but it can be one of the best things that people can do to start moving forward again.
What do you think is a good first step for someone who feels like they are having a hard time, uh, like physically improving things because their mental health is kind of bad, and they're kind of, then the mental health is kind of suffering too? Do you think it's a good idea to kind of push through, kind of try to get a little bit of exercise in, and kind of have that compounding effect, or you think it's better to start off with improving your mental health to get your exercise better?
I don't think it needs to be. So exercise is easy. Like if you want DIY things, I think this is where I think aerobic exercise in particular is quite helpful. Like we don't have to worry about, sometimes on that mental health side of things, there's a load of research that says that just like light, easy physical exercise is really great. Go outside, go someplace that you like, take a brisk walk. If you got mountains around you, go for a little hike. If you like running, great. If you like biking, great. Find something that you enjoy and just get outside, get in fresh air, get your body moving, get your heart rate up a little bit. You don't need to push it. You're not trying to get fit. You're just trying to get things moving a little bit. That is a zero cost thing that you can do with 30 minutes of your time. It's also going to, as like a break between practice sessions, that's going to clear out that's going to help that a lot too. But just if you can get out and do walks. The other piece that's really helpful is anything that goes in this category that these days gets called like non-sleep deep rest. So yoga nidra type body scan meditations. You can do mindfulness meditation, you can do breathing. There's a whole host of strategies that are just trying to help you relax and calm your mind there. But the next thing I think is it's just important to go see if you can find somebody who can help you. Schools should have lots of resources in that way. Most schools take mental health pretty seriously, and so you can probably find someone in your school health center or elsewhere. But yeah, I think I personally, and again, I can't give too much specific advice on mental health, but for myself, there usually needs to be some combination of get my body moving outside, slow down, do a little bit of breathing and just relaxation stuff. The other thing is sleep. Sleep is humongous. Prioritizing sleep. Another independent predictor of injury that you wouldn't think is an injury thing, but pain and injury are tightly correlated to sleep, and so is mental health. And all of those ping off of each other as well, because if you're having difficulties with mental health or having difficulties with an injury, sleep becomes more challenging.
Kind of irrelevant to music, but for myself, do you have any recommendations for exercises either in the morning or right before going to bed that can help improve your sleep?
Not really. I think it's more routine type things. So I haven't seen anything about exercising in particular helping your sleep. Generally things that are going to help your sleep more is consistency of routine and time, as well as things that help you just, I don't know, a lot of people like to try and go till the end of the day and then try and shut off right away, versus having some kind of buffer in there to do some kind of something that you find calms things down and can help turn things off, whether it's for me, it's reading books, read fiction, not nonfiction, just something that's purely something fun to read. I like doing that. I try not to, I try and compartmentalize my life so that, all of my problems will be there when I wake up and none of them need to be solved here at 10 p.m. And so I can just kind of like put those off to the side until the morning. But yeah, there's a whole host of different things that people can try. I did for a while, I worked in a research lab, and there was a sleep scientist who was there. And like there's a whole bunch of things that you can do, but ultimately each person has to experiment with them, and there's not right or wrong or absolutes. It's what's working, what's working for you, but being willing to experiment with consistent timing, carving out some time to calm things down, doing things that can help your body temperature decrease, such as taking a hot shower, things like that. Light exposure, I've read, is important, where if you can get sunlight in your eyes early in the day and sunlight in your eyes late in the day, that can be helpful as well.
That's interesting. I was under the impression that exercise could really help with your sleep.
I think regular exercise, yes. I'm not sure about proximity to it. So if you're not exercising regularly and you start bringing in, like if you just brought in a pattern of, a let's say it was 5 minutes of mobility work in the morning, 10 minutes of recovery work at some point after you're done playing, a couple of days a week of a little bit of strength work, and maybe, a daily 30-minute walk, whether that's walking to get somewhere or something like that. I think that would go a long way.
I see. So would you say like cardio and strength training at night would have minimal effect on sleep, or would you say it might keep you up because it's preventing you from winding down?
It depends. For me, I don't do well exercising at night. It just takes me longer to decrease things. I found for me, I'm best exercising late afternoon. Because in the morning I would prefer to do more thinky, creative kind of stuff. In the afternoon, I kind of get this, like a lot of people, I get this dip in my energy levels. And even though there's a dip there, if I go exercise there, I come out of that much better. And then in the evening, I can just focus on, I don't know, my evenings tend to be a little bit chaotic because I've got little kids. But then after they're in bed, then just focusing on, doing a couple tasks to set myself up for the next day. And then, for me, it's play a little bit of music and read a little bit of a book. For musicians, it might not be playing music because that can be too close to your profession. I just play for fun.
Yeah, it's funny how, like, for some people music can be relaxing. For some people it can induce anxiety.
Well, maybe it's the same thing with exercise for me, since I deal in exercise all day long. Maybe that's part of my, it's too close to home for me in the evening, and has me thinking about the various things that I should do for this person or that person's program or what have you. So I don't know, maybe results may vary, but maybe try. Certainly for most musicians, I might recommend exercise over playing music in the evening. Not a good practice time.
Moving back to an actual musician's topic,
Yeah,
are there
it is. I think the sleep, mental health, and things like that. That's all. That's going to get over the next years. I think that's going to get bigger and bigger, because even from a performance perspective, because learning music, the better you recover and the better you sleep, the better you will consolidate muscle memory.
Right.
If you're recovering and you're sleeping, you will learn the skill of music faster.
I like to think of sleep as almost like a hack. If you have good
100%.
It's like you're automatically becoming a more effective in your career.
And it gets it more important as you get older. So I see a lot of musicians. So I talk to a lot of musicians more online who are kind of music school early career, but a lot of the ones that I see in my clinic are in their 50s. And if you want to, once you're beyond about 25, if you want to keep learning things, your brain is not quite as plastic. So you need to get better at strategies that help it consolidate information faster. It's part of the reason why adult learners, like if you have an adult violinist, they won't progress nearly as quickly. But if you're sleeping better, or if you're doing some of these relaxation techniques immediately after practice, you can consolidate information much more quickly, even as an adult. But yes, in every domain, sleep will be a superpower.
Yeah. Are there any exercises that might actually, like we were talking about earlier, there's some exercises that are standard in the gym, but not necessarily helpful for musicians. Are there any exercises that are common that musicians might assume are good for them, but will actually harm their musical ability?
I think it all depends on what your body is ready for. So I think there's some people out there saying you should never do this, you should never do that. I don't. I think it's just a matter of when rather than you should never. There's no. A very common one is musicians shouldn't be doing things where you're putting weight through your hands because that's dangerous for your hands, and that could be the case if you don't have great mobility through your hands and your wrists, and you start too fast. So if you're like I'm going to go right into a 90-minute yoga hand balancing class and you haven't done anything like that, and your flexibility profile through your wrists is not great, that can cause a real big problem for you. But if you start by doing some basic hands on the ground and working that mobility, there's no reason why you couldn't work up to a mobility, or to some crazy hand balancing thing if that's something that's valuable to you to do. Because I've talked to some musicians who are like, I just want to do whatever exercise to keep me healthy enough to play my music, and they're unhappy. And I've talked to some who are like, I like powerlifting or I like CrossFit. And there's a little bit of a line there where going too far can certainly be problem. Like you're just at a little bit higher injury risk depending on how you approach it. But if for that person that the value of that for them physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, community-wise with some of those things, then that it outweighs that, then that's great, and there's no reason why they can't. But so with anything, I think of it a little bit like building calluses on your hands for the rest of your body. If you haven't done anything with your hands and then you go out and you shovel rocks for 6 hours, you're probably going to rip up your hands. But that doesn't mean you can't ever do that. That doesn't mean that shoveling rocks for 6 hours is inherently dangerous. It's just that you weren't prepared for that. And if you start a little bit, and it's the same thing with going to a festival. If you go to a festival and you come out of the festival injured, which is very common, doesn't mean that festivals are bad. It just means that your body was not prepared for that. If you want to start doing 50 push-ups every day and your wrists hurt and you tweak your shoulder, it's because you needed to start with like 10 push-ups up on your countertop and then gradually increase it from there. So for some people, it really depends on what people want. If people just want to solely go for, I just want to do what's best for my music, then I'd say focus on those little postural muscles. If people are like, I want to do whatever type of exercise this is because I find it valuable, or it can be any reason or no reason, just I want to, then it's just a matter of, if you haven't done something like that in a long time, start in a way that is really simple and basic, and then gradually do a little bit more. Something I talk about a lot with people is that the rate at which different parts of your body adapts to a stressor is different. So your nervous system will get better at doing the movement really quickly. From minutes to a couple of days, you'll move more efficiently. You'll learn the technique of that new exercise. Within the next kind of 4 to 6 weeks, your muscle fibers will get bigger, so you can output more force. But for your joints, ligaments, tendons, and things like that, discs in your spine, to get stronger, and those, we don't think of exercise as making those stronger, but it absolutely does. But that takes more in the neighborhood of 6 months or so of consistently loading it. So it's very easy to get into a situation where you start doing a new movement or activity or exercise. You make progress on it pretty quickly. Your muscles get strong, but your joints, tendons, and ligaments haven't had time to strengthen up, and you can output more force than your structure can handle, and you can create an injury there. And so that doesn't mean that that's a bad activity. It just means that you need to go a little bit slower and give it more time and pay attention to your body.
Does what you're saying about the activities that require a lot of hand motion apply to like tennis and badminton?
Yeah, so tennis, pickleball, badminton, all of those sports have a pretty high risk of dominant side wrist and forearm problems. So you want to be aware of that. If you're, I played tennis in high school. I still play tennis sometimes now. And the first time, I didn't play for a long time. The first time I went back and played for like the next 5 days, my forearm was on fire because I was having fun and my muscle memory was there, and so I could play. but these tendons and muscles were not up to that. But because I was having fun and doing it, I didn't get a lot of information in the moment. Like it'd be nice if I started to hurt while I was playing, so I knew that I should be stopping. But because I was having fun, things were warmed up and all of that, um, it it got aggravated. Um, so that's certainly a possibility for me because I deal with injuries professionally. I go like, oh, I just irritated this. If I give it a break, recover, I'm going to be back. This is not threatening my livelihood in any way. Then I'm good. But for things that might do that, then it's not a no. You just might want to approach it a little bit more slowly, or take your competitive nature and put it off to the side a little bit as you start engaging in those, and do it a little bit more consistently. Just give your body time to adapt, and it will.
What would you say is like the best like sport or hobby, outside of like doing just those stretches, but something that has the least risk for musicians?
If you were to get into something that you want super low risk, it would just be like hiking. Like
Right.
hiking. So if you go outdoors in nature with friends, moving your body like that, if you put together those four things, really good things happen. Hiking, you might twist your ankle, you might fall down. That's not going to impact most people's performance. It's going to be really good for your mental, emotional, and social health. It's not going to change your overuse profile too much, but I think that would just give so many other benefits. Hiking with friends if you have the ability, or going for a walk with friends. But really, it's what do you enjoy doing the most? It might be just trying out some different things, seeing what your friends are into. I think the social aspect, a lot of that is really great. So if you're talking to a friend and they're like, you know what, I really like lifting weights, come with me sometime, and you might check it out, and that's it. Even if it doesn't do much to change your injury risk profile, it'll do more than nothing. And like that's a low. I would much rather have people, doing things like that where they're engaging with other people, and moving their bodies. Like that's the health benefits of that are huge.
Right. Yeah, it's
different person to person.
Yeah, like hiking
The best movement
goes. You're in Colorado, of course, but
yeah,
I'm in Los Angeles. A lot
yeah.
less hiking opportunities around here.
Walk on the beach.
Yeah,
There you go. It's beautiful there. You got some hills.
some parts are beautiful somewhere.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, and
I go to the touristy parts.
we're almost out of time, but
Sure.
I have this one last question that I forgot to ask earlier.
Yeah, please.
How effective are ergonomic adjustments and instrument modifications when preventing injuries? Would you say like using bow grips or like a special chairs for musicians have a big impact?
They can. So that goes into in our water in the cup model. Ergonomic adjustments just allow you to do the same amount while pouring less into your cup. They make things less stressful. So in some cases, they can be really helpful. If the cup is too small, if the cup is like getting double the volume poured into it, and you do an ergonomic adjustment that's going to make a 10% change, that's not going to be enough to change things. But I think there's some really interesting stuff. I talked to a luthier who makes violas and will make asymmetrical violas and do some interesting things with that to try and conform the instrument to the person without changing the sound quality. Violas are interesting because they're a little bit more flexible. Like I just had somebody pick up a new one that was slightly shorter and with a slightly shorter scale length, and that's made a huge difference for him. It took him some time to find one that sounded the way that he wanted it to, because his previous one was a really nice instrument, so it took him some time to find one, but he found one. But that can help. Chair position can help. Different adjustments to the instrument itself, bracing in some cases can help a little bit. But that's one third of your options. That's not even a third. That's one component in the modifying the instrument playing. So I've had some people who are like, well, I tried this adjustment and this adjustment, or they'll spend an incredible amount of time on, tweaking this chin rest or that chin rest for violinists in particular. And it just can't quite get right, when I think there's a load that you can do to change your body to be more resilient as well. So it's certainly helpful.
I'm glad
I'm
you
actually looking into purchasing an ergonomic guitar.
really. How does that
There's
work?
some interesting ones. So there's a company called Strandberg that's they've basically, they make electric guitars. They look kind of crazy, but it's headless. It's much smaller. The contours are designed to fit your body. They do some interesting things with the neck, where the back of the neck is less of a uniform curve and more of a little trapezoid, and the contour of the trapezoid changes depending on where you are along the neck. So I'm very interested in getting my hands on one of these and trying it out, and because I have a fair amount of guitar players that I see as well. So that's something that's mostly what I'm playing now. So I'm interested in that, and to feel for me how different a change that would be.
I'm glad you brought up the cup analogy. I know you did like a podcast on it, one of your earlier.
Yeah,
and
I do it on all of them. I can't do that. I can't say that analogy too much. I think there's so much power in understanding a simple analogy that illuminates the different. I think a lot of times musicians feel stuck and like there's nothing they can do, and that points out a bunch of different domains that you can make headway. So, sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, that's
um, can you give 5 of like the most effective ways to not increase that cup capacity, but also just to make the holes bigger, increase capacity, reduce the amount of water you add?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, um, so number one, we've talked about some of them. Physical warm up at some point before you play. 5 minutes is all you need. You could go to musiciansmaintenance.com/warmup. I think I have one on there. I think it's on my YouTube channel. Simple stuff, doesn't need to be anything crazy. Number 2 is doing some kind of targeted stretching in the evenings. Number 3 would be structuring your practice so that you have adequate breaks in your practice. So actually taking a break, and actually when you're taking a break, you don't just have your phone doing whatever, but that you're taking a break, taking in a little bit of food, because you are using energy as you practice, and you need to replenish your energy here and there as you go while you're playing. So, some type of break depending on the person every 45 to 90 minutes. I haven't seen anything that says it should be exactly this much, but breaking up your practice time. Number 3 would be taking what I call micro breaks every 30 minutes. So there's a discrepancy between how much your body would like to move and what your brain needs in order to focus in and get in the flow and really get into a task. But the easy thing that you can do is every 30 minutes, like a lot of musicians that I work with have some type of like plan when they're practicing. It's like, I'm going to do this for the first, 20 minutes. I'm going to do this for this long. In between, as you're transitioning from like, I'm working scales and I'm working rep or something like that. As you make that transition, take 5 seconds, go thumbs back, chest up, chin down, stretch that, and then go on to the next thing. And that's just going to take you out of this kind of thing that our body gets into, and go the opposite way. Same deal if you're doing a lot of computer work, because musicians these days spend a lot of time on their computer as well. This every 20 to 30 minutes. That's just a little mini like dump the cup, dump the cup, dump the cup. And that can help things as well. So that would be, what have we got? Warm up, recover, structure your practice, micro breaks, and then do some kind of exercise.
Great. Thank you so much. Before we end, we like to give the guest an opportunity to kind of talk about what they offer. Your website. So please.
Yeah, so I've got my website's musiciansmaintenance.com. There's the main thing there is if you put in your email, I will send you 10 days of exercises, all in the neighborhood of exactly the ones that we've been talking about. So the palm press exercise, the middle back exercise, and then one exercise for each of the body areas. And then I put it together into a workout where I just guide you through about a 25-minute workout that addresses all those areas, as well as has you do the warm up that I talked about as well. So all of that you can use. It's all totally free. It gives you a little bit of a flavor for kind of how I think we should um, start addressing exercise and musicians in a way that gives your body what it needs while also respecting the fact that you all are wildly busy, and so trying to thread that needle to get you doing a little bit here and there while also reminding you that your body is the most important piece of your instrument, I guess. You can always get another instrument if you need to, but you've got one body.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Weisbach. It was an honor finally speaking to you. I actually wanted to reach out to you back in 2023 since things got busy, but your email list is so great. Thank you so much
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
for coming on.